All right. Hello, everyone. I am Clarissa Kennedy, and I'm one of the co-founders of Sweet Sobriety. And we are so excited that you're joining us tonight for this open house and live presentation. We're going to talk a little bit about who each of us are. And then I'm going to introduce Pam, and she's going to give us a bit of psychoeducation and maybe share some of her story on relapse prevention. And then at the end, we are going to leave time for some questions and answers. And if you have any questions about the conference, we're happy to answer that as well. So Pamela is going to be one of our speakers coming up at the Sweet Sobriety meetup that we're hosting October 21st to 24th. And we're very excited because it's 4 days of speakers, workshops, somatic practices, coaching experiences, and really also after all of the work we do, we're going to play. After that, if you want to come out and hang out with us and go out for dinner with us and explore Toronto with us. And actually, we're really hoping that most of our speakers will be joining us as well. As many of them have said, they're going to be there for all 4 days and experience Toronto and this whole community together. So we couldn't be more excited about that. So we'll talk a little bit more about that at the end. And so again, my background, I am a social worker. I recently was trained in somatic practices and somatically informed self-compassion therapist, I think is what that came with that. And so I'm really excited to share some somatic practices at the workshops. I'm also a mental health and addictions certified. And yeah, I am in my own personal story of recovery from both eating disorders and food addiction. And it has been Molly and my passion to create a community that would be accessible and where you could all, there would be no financial barriers and you would get the best of clinicians that we could offer you in this field, and really courses and community where you can all connect with each other. So the fact that we now get to meet all our members, we could not be more excited to just be able to spend time with you in person, because we know online is great, but in person is just like so much better. So we're really excited to meet you all. And we hope that as many of you can come as possible. And I will pass it over to the other Sweet Sobriety co-founder, Molly Painshop.
Thanks, Clarissa. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Molly Painshop. I'm a dual licensed mental health and addiction counselor in Montana. I always let people know that for two reasons. One, because I'm only going to practice therapy with you if you are physically in the state of Montana, because that's where I am licensed. So everything else that I do is recovery coaching. And there is a fine line between therapy and coaching. And the second reason I let you know that is because, much like Clarissa, I have a background that I have an educated background. I have a master's degree in mental health. I have many years of working in the field since 2005. And I have worked in corrections, sexual assault, the crisis suicide hotline. I've worked closely with judges in the community, child protective services in the community, all of that. And so, like Clarissa was saying, we bring that knowledge and experience and apply it to treating at the intersection of food addiction or addiction and eating disorders or disordered eating. That's a very brief bio of who I am. If you guys ever have any questions, you want to know more, just let me know. I'm super excited to be working with Clarissa and to have Sweet Sobriety, the community that we're attempting to build. We're almost a year old and it's been amazing. And we also co-host the Food Junkies podcast. So if you've never heard of that, I highly suggest tuning into that as well. So with that, I'm going to pass it off to Bethany Mazaru, who is a very huge support, big support for us, and a valued team member of Sweet Sobriety.
Oh, thanks, Molly. And she pronounced my name perfectly. Like if you've ever looked at my last name and thought, well, how do I say that? It's Mazaru, like kangaroo. So I live in Kitchener, Ontario, Canada. I have a master's of social work and I'm registered with the Ontario College of Social Workers, and that's typically how I practice. And like many people who work in this field, I have my own story, my personal story of sugar and food addiction. So if you want to hear more about my story, Sweet Sobriety YouTube channel is a great place to go. You can see my story plus a whole lot of other ones. Molly's done a lot of work in pulling together stories from people like us who have our own struggles, and we get it, right? So, but very briefly, like I can remember sneaking food or eating more than my share or scheming to get more than my share from a really early age. And then I battled with weight and my shape for more than 40 years, and thought this is like the one thing I couldn't figure out. Read all kinds of books about it, tried all kinds of diets. Some of them were really crazy. And every time I started one, it was with fresh hope and ended in defeat, right? So learning about sugar and food addiction was key for me. But I've also learned that food addiction is just one part of the story, right? It's like the tip of the iceberg. So as long as I'm focused on only the food and my weight, I wasn't dealing with everything underneath, like emotions and relationships and codependency and workaholism and perfectionism, all those wonderful things that we deal with at Sweet Sobriety, because we know that those are the roots that often lead us to the food. So the way I work is, we're going to talk about more than the food. And I use gentle accountability. And I do that with a lot of compassion and grace, because let's face it, you've probably been pretty hard on yourself up until this point. And so I offer the compassion and grace, and I consider it a real privilege to be able to walk beside people who are on this journey. And one of the many, many reasons that I've chosen to partner with Sweet Sobriety is because Molly and Clarissa are the real deal. They're very authentic, and they truly want what's best for you. And that aligns with my own values too. We're not dogmatic. They don't think that there's only one way to recover. And that honesty that they bring with clients, with ourselves, that's a part of my own core values and something that Sweet Sobriety really encourages and embodies, right? So you'll never experience a bait and switch or experience fluffy promotions. It's because we walk the talk and we keep learning how to help people to achieve that freedom from sugar and food addiction. So yeah, that's a little bit about me. I need to hop off at 7 tonight, but I am so excited to have Pamela, and I'm going to just stay tuned for as much as I can of your presentation tonight, and I'll probably catch the replay later.
Thanks, Bethany. And I just wanted to let everyone know before I introduce Pam that we are having an Instagram Live next week, Wednesday, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, to let you know about our next course, which is defense mechanisms. And it's going to be taught by Molly Painshop, and that will be the course for September. So we're really excited about that. So you can check that out next week. And now I will introduce our very special guest, and her name is Pamela Mekuz, and I hope I pronounced that right. She is a food addiction counselor, and she focuses on the bariatric surgery community. She founded Life is Sweet Counseling, where she helps pre and post-op clients achieve long-term weight loss surgery success. Like so many others, Pamela wanted to believe that bariatric surgery would solve her lifelong struggle with weight. When her bad habits started returning after the honeymoon period, Pamela began her own search for answers. Understanding her disordered eating as an addiction was a game-changing revelation for her. And then Pamela became obsessed with all things recovery, and we are so glad she did. She studied everything she could about addiction and became certified as a food addiction professional through the InFact School. And she's now filling that gap in the bariatric surgery by educating the public on food addiction treatment as the missing link in long-term weight loss surgery success. And she leads an active online community. You've probably seen her live in Vera's Facebook group. She runs a weekly support group in there as well. And she's always on Facebook and Instagram and sharing her tips and tools on social media. She is going to speak for us on Sunday at our meetup, and she's going to be talking about how to get into the readiness mindset. And today, Pamela is going to talk about relapse prevention. So take it away, Pamela.
All right. Hi, guys. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for the beautiful introduction. And so I'm going to share my screen. And I'm going to like keep things rolling pretty quickly because I have a lot to get through, and I'm hoping it'll probably be around the half-hour mark. So, okay, here we go. Share my screen. And I'm also speaking from notes. So if you see me looking a little bit offside, that's what's happening. So I'm so happy to be here with you guys today. Thank you so much for being here. As you know, my name is Pamela, and I'm going to tell you, although that was a beautiful introduction, I'll tell you a little bit more about myself in a moment. And I'm just going to briefly introduce the topic of today's little mini lesson, which is powerful everyday strategies to prevent relapse. So I know a lot about food addiction recovery from a very personal standpoint and now a professional standpoint. And staying on track and preventing relapse is what it's all about. So I'm going to share some real practical take-home tips that you can start using tomorrow, today. And they're going to help you stay on track, because I know firsthand when we are deep in the food, life can get really miserable, and we don't want that. And compulsive overeating robs our life of so much joy and purpose. So let's spend the next half hour or so coming together in the hope and knowledge that there's a big, beautiful life that is ours for the taking. And that's what recovery is all about. How's the speed? Give me a thumbs up. Yeah, okay. Okay, so I'm going to get real for a moment. My story of recovery looks a lot more like the graph on the right. And I know that there are people that heard of food addiction, heard about abstinence, made some changes, and like have been abstinent for, years on end. That is totally not my story. It's something that I just feel compelled to be very honest about, because that's not my story. I'm sure it's not many of yours. So real talk is that recovery is messy and life gets lifey, and we have to learn how to navigate the ups and downs of life, and growth is just not seamless. So when things don't go as perfectly as we think they should, the last thing I want anyone to do is just throw in the towel. No, we are here as real people to gain real strategies to deal with real recovery in the real world. So if you are a perfect person, you probably won't gain much from this talk. But if you are like me and you're imperfect and messy and beautiful and complicated, then I hope you will find some useful information here. And I also want to share the message before I go on, like a message of hope, that a history of relapse is not a sign that you can never recover. So if you've been struggling for years, it's just a sign that you need to roll up your sleeves and get back into treatment, and hopefully find the right treatment, one that deals with relapse recovery and where you have a good plan in place that will help you. And that will help you stay sober for longer periods of time, or maybe hopefully achieve real long-term sobriety. So, this is me. My name is Pamela Mekuz. I currently actually live in Toronto, but fun fact, I'm moving to Portugal for the year. So when I'm not putting together workshops on food addiction recovery, I'm getting ready for a big move. But I will be here for this Sweet Sobriety meetup in October, and I'm very happy to be a part of that. I put together my workshop, just like it flowed from me, and it is on cultivating a readiness mindset. And I feel like it's going to be a very powerful experience, and I'm so excited to partake in the other workshops. So it's going to be amazing. My background is in education. I was an elementary school teacher for many years, but now I work full-time as a food addiction professional, helping people finally find a more peaceful relationship with food. So how did I get here? Briefly, Bethany, I related to a lot of what you shared. I never remember a time when I was not food obsessed. I have memories of binge eating as early as kindergarten. And something that is so poignant to me is literally anytime I made a wish on a birthday, on an eyelash, it was always just to be skinny. It was all I ever wanted. My weight, and more specifically, my compulsive overeating, was one of the most central focuses of my existence. And like many of you, I tried everything to lose weight, all while carrying the increasing shame and pain of obesity. I remember hearing about food addiction as a disease with abstinence as the proposed treatment. And my reaction was just a hard no. Like that was not for me. I just wanted to be normal and have a normal relationship with food. Thank you very much. And, you know, I continued to struggle. I eventually turned to bariatric surgery, and I did initially lose weight. And then, oh my gosh, things just went back to how they were. It was really terrible and scary. And at that point, I had to really face the undeniable fact that I was an addict. I saw so many parallels between my behavior and like and you know, alcoholism. It was the same. I accepted the fact that I needed to treat my food addiction to ever overcome this terrible disease that honestly was ruining my life. But accepting that I was an addict was also freeing in a way, because it let me know that I wasn't bad or weak or defective. I had a physiological problem, and thankfully I was pointed in the direction of help. Like Clarissa said, I just became obsessed, and I still am. And it's my life's passion at this point. And I mean, there are so many people suffering, and there is a way out. And, you know, I'm all about finding our way out together, because, you know, we need to do it together. We can't do it alone. One day I was walking down the street. I was feeling great in my body and my mind. And I said to myself, how can I make sure that I never go back to how I was, to that life of misery and pain and isolation? I didn't want to ever go back there. And I had the thought, I'm just going to make this new recovery life my whole life. And that's when I decided to go to school to officially get certified, and turn it into a career. And I do focus my education on the bariatric community, because I just find it absolutely shocking and abhorrent how little information there is on food addiction treatment in bariatric treatment centers. Because I know so many people are suffering with the pain of regaining weight, thinking that they just have nowhere else to turn and that they are a personal failure. So I'm trying to fill a gaping and very necessary treatment gap. So just a little bit, 2 seconds of self-promotion. If you want to see my website, here it is. You can read more about me and my offerings, and then my socials. I post a lot of reels really about my own life. Like, it's very easy for me, because this is what day to day I live, a life of food addiction recovery. So if you're interested in seeing those, maybe you've seen some of them already, you can follow me. I also have a support group on Facebook, and I hold weekly support group meetings on Monday nights. Okay. So I have these pictures. You know, who doesn't love a flashy pic, right? This is like the salesy kind of pic. And I will say it a million times, the goal of food addiction recovery is not weight loss, it's peace around food. But I mean, who doesn't want to feel good in a bathing suit, really? But I just want to point out, and I'll come back to this point often, is that in food addiction recovery, there really isn't a before and after. There's only before and during, because we have to take steps every day to stay in recovery and prevent relapse. And that's what I'm going to talk about from here on out. Okay. So addiction is a chronic, incurable disease. So those ideas I had about just being normal, well, it's just not in the cards for me. There's a saying in addiction that once a pickle, always a pickle, meaning that if you have an addict's brain, you know, you're a pickle. You can't go back to being a cucumber. And so an addict will always be an addict, and we have to take steps to stay and maintain our recovery. So the next point I want to make is that abstinence is important for recovery, but it is not the only or ultimate goal. Of course, you know, abstinence, first of all, I want to mention that abstinence can look different for different people. Certainly, I advocate for removing ultra-processed foods and sugars and flours from your diet, and taking time to learn what foods trigger you, but this is a very individual process for people. And this is very helpful in getting control of your cravings. But there's another common saying in food addiction circles, which is that food addiction recovery is not about the food. And I find clients actually sometimes get annoyed with me because they want to talk about food, and I'm always wanting to talk about other stuff like feelings and boundaries and stuff like that. So food addiction recovery takes new habits and new thought patterns and new coping strategies. And without these changes, abstinence won't be possible long term. So you can become analogous to a dry drunk, white knuckling through life, but that's not the goal. The goal of recovery is to learn how to live a meaningful and comfortable life without abusing food. Okay, so I like this little video that I kind of thought was funny, but it's relevant, and it's kind of the reminder that recovery is kind of like walking up a down escalator, but not in like an onerous, overwhelming way, but it does require continuous effort, as this guy falls down the escalator. But you know, in my opinion, this effort and this vigilance, at the end of the day, they're gifts. And I think most people who are in long-term recovery would agree that you come to see these daily activities that you need to engage in really as gifts. So let's talk how we can keep walking up this down escalator of food addiction recovery. We're not going to be like that guy falling down. We're going to take the steps we need to take. Okay. Next slide. Come on. Nope. Let's try this. Sorry, guys. There we go. Okay, so when I started my journey in food addiction recovery, I was told very clearly abstinence is black and white. And I mean, abstinence has never looked so cute, right? Look at those little guys. Now, this is a true statement. And also, to be perfectly honest, it was kind of problematic for me. So it took me a long time to get rooted in recovery. And personally, having this really black and white perspective, not just about food, but about all aspects of these things that I was supposed to be doing, was very difficult. I think that this black and white perspective can be helpful, as it helps us create boundaries for ourselves in some cases. However, black and white thinking can also lead to these perfectionist ideals. And that when we're not perfect, when we dare to be human, we may throw our hands up in the air and succumb to the what the hell effect, which is kind of like, well, I already ate one cookie, I might as well eat the whole tray and then go out for ice cream, right? So black and white thinking is both important and then also can be problematic. So while these pandas are very cute, I tend to find this image a little bit more helpful for me in conceptualizing recovery. So we do need to have high ideals for ourselves. We need to understand that abstinence is very important and that all these activities that we need to engage in are very important. And we need to hold ourselves to high standards, but we need to walk this tightrope of these high ideals and understanding that we're human and perfection doesn't exist. So this tightrope of high ideals and compassion towards our humanism. So I hope that this image is useful, and we're going to keep it in mind as we go forward with the presentation. And now I'm going to talk specifically, we're going to talk specifically how to recognize when a relapse happens, because we don't want to fall off that tightrope. So relapse happens long before the first bite. A common mistake, a mistaken belief, is that relapse is spontaneous and sudden, and it's something that we have no control of. It produces a feeling of helplessness and powerlessness, and relapse sort of becomes this mysterious process over which we have no control. But no more. We're going to smash that disbelief, because we're going to learn the signs of an impending relapse, because in truth, there are many warning signs. So once you learn to recognize and manage these early warning signs, you can stop the relapse before it has a chance to get started, or before it's kind of like, out of control. And this requires a certain degree of vigilance and awareness. And your best chances of success involve recognizing the danger signs in the early stages, in which your chances of success are greater. So we're going to talk about 3 stages of relapse. The first stage is the emotional stage, and this is way before even any cravings occur. So you might start to just have rising negative emotions, and this might cause you to leave behind some of the actions that benefit you. So here it says, for example, you might start to self-isolate. This might mean that you stop going to support group meetings, for example, or maybe you're going to the support group meetings, but you're not sharing, or you're avoiding social events. You're not reaching out to friends and family. In this stage, you might start neglecting some of your self-care, maybe your hygiene, maybe your sleeping habits, and just notice that these signs have nothing to do with food, but they do point to the fact that something is out of whack in your life and you require some degree of self-care. It's best and often easiest to remedy the situation at this stage. Try to figure out what you need and provide care for yourself in a way that doesn't involve food. So we'll talk about this a little bit more in just a minute, but that would be the first stage. And the next stage is the mental stage, where your mind is going back and forth, debating about going back into the food, starting really thinking about food in different kind of ways. Maybe you're reminiscing about eating again. Maybe you're minimizing the negative consequences of past use and glamorizing eating in a way that is not rooted in reality. You may begin becoming preoccupied with food, thinking about it a lot, or planning eating opportunities. So from the emotional stage to the mental stage, and last is the physical stage, is what maybe you are thinking of as the relapse when you're actually eating, and that can be progressive, right? So it really can get out of control. So we want to get a handle of things as early as possible. So those are the 3 stages. And now I'm going to highlight very quickly, just so that you're aware, so that you can have these in your mind, some real specific food-related relapse warning signs, so that you can know what to look out for. So obsessive food thoughts, decrease in the frequency of measuring or sloppy measurements. If you measure your food, that's a personal, some people do, some people don't, but increase in volume eating, overeating, maybe abstinent foods, adding in triggering yellow light foods. These differ person to person, but maybe, tend to be things like grains, fruits, nuts, cheese, treats, these like sugar-free things, eating red light foods, or adding in other addictive substances. Now, this is all about overeating, but another warning sign could also be undereating. So reducing portions for weight loss, skipping meals, starting to be preoccupied with weight loss and having maybe unrealistic goals or just a preoccupation, negotiating with food plan or making changes and not talking to anybody about them, not planning, not checking ingredient lists, and eating while distracted. So these are sort of warning signs. Something's up. Let me delve into a little bit about what's going on with me. Okay. So we've looked at a lot of our thoughts and behaviors as potential relapse warning signs. And now we're going to look at situational factors that might be high risk for relapse. So here are some factors. And it's just good to be aware so that we're going into a situation that could be risky, and we got to protect ourselves against these situations. So exposure to triggers, how often do I hear people crying out for help at work when somebody's brought in whatever to the office, or maybe it's going to a birthday party or something like that. Stress, interpersonal problems, peer pressure, again, food pushers are rampant in our society. So that can be a risk factor for relapse. Lack of social support. We've talked a lot about isolation being problematic. Physical pain, low self-efficacy. And I also really think it's important that not just negative things can be risk factors for relapse, but positive feelings, feeling really good, can also sort of be uprooting in a way, and that makes us turn to food, and also we use it for celebration. So these are things to be aware of. So it's good to go into these situations prepared with a plan, and we'll go into a little bit more about what that might look like in a minute. The last thing in terms of sort of risk factors is this acronym HALT, which asks you to consider: are you hungry, angry, lonely, tired? And if you are, you might be at risk, and it's best to take action to remedy these situations and avoid relapse. So part of how we stay in recovery is taking steps every day to avoid being overwhelmed by any of these states of being. So we plan, we prepare food so we don't get too hungry, we develop communication and self-regulation skills to help us deal with big feelings, we make sure to stay connected to others in recovery, to get to bed on time, and we do these things as regularly as we can so we can, and these are the steps going up the escalator like I talked about. Now, the meat. Let's talk about concrete tools. So these are some real, I'm going to show you 3 actionable steps that you can start right now that I think are really helpful for relapse prevention. So the first step involves the framework of dividing our behaviors into green, yellow, and red light zones. Okay, so the green light behaviors are all the daily activities that keep you okay, right? These are the steps that, the steps, I keep repeating it, but the steps up the down escalator. They're the things that create structure and routine around your food and eating, but also the things that keep you emotionally, psychologically, and spiritually okay. The things that help you cope with life instead of food. So here you will see food-related items and life-related items. And in a moment, we're going to look at a specific list with examples, but I'm just going to explain it to you first. So green is ideal, right? We want to be living many days in the green zone. It's a great place to be. We feel great when we're in the green zone. And, we need to have, like I said, high expectations, and remember that there is, an element of black and white with this. And when we have high expectations, it gives us a little bit of wiggle room. This is my experience, right? So we have a little room to sort of fall, and we have permission to be human. And it serves sort of as a warning that something's up, right? It's a call to action. Maybe you need to rest or go grocery shopping. Maybe you need to reach out to a friend or take yourself out to a pedicure. So it's both this cushion and a warning. Okay, so, and then we're going to go to the red light zone, where those are the activities that you are accepting as no-nos in your life as you commit to real change. It's kind of like the basement that you set for yourself that you really don't want to go below no matter what. Obviously, you have permission to be human, but you also can commit to upholding certain standards no matter what as best you can. So even on your worst day, maybe you say, even on my worst day, maybe I'm not going to measure, maybe I'm going to eat too much fruit, but I'm never going to go into processed foods. So that's kind of the red zone. But if you're living in the yellow zone, you're more likely to fall back into the red. So living in the yellow zone is a signal that you're going to meet your needs and move back up to the green. Hopefully that makes sense. We'll look at a list now. And again, this is very individual. There's no one size fits all for recovery, but here are some items just to give you an idea of things that you might want to include in your chart. So for green zone, maybe you're going to eat 3 meals and 1 snack a day. You're going to avoid all flour and sugar, measure quantities of food. I know this is like a little controversial, but I throw that in there. I like it for myself, so I'm partial to that. Eating mindfully, drinking water between meals, checking in with a buddy every day. I never talk about exercise. If you know me, I only talk about moving joyfully. So we're going to move joyfully on our green days. And maybe you have a morning routine that includes a journal, exercise, or meditation. This is like very ideal. Sounds lovely. Now we have the yellow zone, which might be overeating, your sort of acceptable foods, being careless with quantities. I mean, some days you're not going to have time to measure. Like, of course, we all have busy lives. Like, that doesn't mean you've fallen off the wagon. This is called real life. Eating in front of the television, maybe you're just like totally emotionally exhausted and that's what you need, right? Like, right, okay. Restricting quantities or skipping a meal. We get busy. We have patterns that we've carried for so many years. Like this is just reality. Perseverating on body size, self-isolating, neglecting your self-care. Maybe you're staying up too late, scrolling on social media. Again, it happens. That is sort of an act in self-care in itself, but long-term, it's probably, maybe we can find a better way. But again, we're human. More than 2 cups of coffee. This is what I have to watch out for. It's like, oh, something's going on. Okay. But then we have also our red list, eating ultra-processed foods. These, again, are personal to me. Eating in the car is just something that I had to say no to. Going through drive-thrus, eating while standing, watching like food TV or like all this sort of food porny stuff. No, eating my kids' leftovers or baking. It was just something that I had to accept, that I have to give up. So this is an example of a list, but I encourage you to make your own. Okay, number 2, coping strategy number 2. So create an emergency action plan. Make a list of strategies that you can use when things get tough, when the food gets loud. So when you're going into one of these high stress situations that we talked about, you can keep this list on hand and refer to it. This should not be a theoretical list. It's not a theoretical thing. These are things that you can use in real life. come up with your own list, but here are some examples of things you could do when you have really strong cravings. So talk to someone, take 10 deep breaths, set a 10-minute timer to distract yourself, drink a cup of water, repeat a mantra, listen to a song you love, journal, recognize and challenge unhelpful thoughts. I'm covering this so I can't see. It says take a something. Take a bath. Pray if that is something that is, meaningful to you. Exit the triggering environment, go for a walk. Again, like make your own list. And then for the, for the overachievers, you can even kind of track and see how they're working, right? So you can say, I tried this strategy. My intensity before was a 10, and now it is it's an 8, or it's a 5, or it's a 2. And the best part about this is that you really get to notice not only which strategies work for you, but you get to notice that actually these cravings do subside, and all you have to do is sort of exist through them, and they're going to subside. So that's a really nice thing to notice. That was number 2. And we're on to number 3. So when a slip happens, the idea is to use it as an opportunity for growth and learning, right? We're not beating ourselves up. We're not berating ourselves. There is no use in that. I mean, and you've probably done that enough in your life, right? So I'm going to take you through really quickly a series of questions I encourage people to use after a slip. And like I said, in the interest of time, I'm going to go through this pretty quickly. And this is something that takes practice. And the idea, like I said, is to use this information so you can understand what happened and make better choices the next time. So if you want, here we go. If you want a copy of this, you can get in touch with me, however, like on social media, whatever, and I'll send you a copy of this. It's really powerful to actually put pen to paper and go through these questions. So I'm going to speed through right to the questions. So let's look at the situation, try to really, so where was I, what happened, retell the story in as much detail as possible. So really to understand not only the specific moment, but what happened leading up to it. The next question will sound familiar because it's kind of what we've been talking about. So what activities or tools have I been using daily to stay rooted in my food addiction recovery? Has anything slipped there as well? Might be something interesting to notice. Were there things in myself or the environment that made me vulnerable? Was there a prompting event that started off a chain of events that led to the eating? And then we're really going to dive into what happened. And what I love about this framework of looking at what happened is it's not just like the physical things that you, like the events, the things that you can see, or the actions that you took, or the actions that person X, Y, and Z took, but it's also really asking you to look into what were your body sensations. For example, were you hungry, tired, lonely? Were you in physical pain? Were there feelings that you were dealing with? So it's a very nuanced way of looking at the situation. And like I said, it does take some practice. And once you sort of list all these things that happen in the event, the next step is to go to the next column of the chart and consider a more useful action that could possibly replace the ineffectual event. And I also think it's very useful to actually close your eyes and imagine yourself even acting differently. And that'll really solidify this, different path in your mind so that next time you can actually do something different. And just some reflection questions. So consider the consequences of the food lapse. How do you feel? What harm did it cause? What are the risks of eating off plan? Create a prevention plan. How can you prevent this from happening in the future? And in conclusion, what have I learned? So, like I said, if that seems something you might want to try, get in touch with me and I'm happy to share with you. Okay, so I will have you know, let me do this. Just a sec, I just got to move this. For my last slide, because it's a very important slide, because one of the greatest perks of following me, in my opinion, one sec. Is all the Elvis content. So Elvis just needed to make an appearance, and he wants to say thank you so much for joining and for listening and for giving me your time. I really hope you found it useful, and any questions, comments, or compliments, I'd love to hear if you had any aha moments or any takeaways. Thank you so much.
Thank you
stop
so
it.
much, Pamela, for that wonderful presentation. And I do want to open it up to anyone who's here. Maybe if anyone has a question, you're welcome to put it in the chat or even put up your hand, whatever you feel comfortable with. CJ.
I didn't have a question, Pamela. However, I wanted to tell you how much I appreciate your slideshow, and it was very informative, and I appreciate all the hard work that you're doing with the bariatric community. I know a lot of people who are suffering in that area, so I appreciate you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, CJ.
Oh, go ahead, Nate and Sean. I don't know who's here, but
Oh, I'm sorry, didn't realize it came through that way. I just wanted to ask, is there any chance you could send us a link in the chat to sign up for your meetings on Mondays?
Yeah, I can. It's just gonna take me a second, but yes.
Yeah, that's great.
it should also be on our resources page. I'll go double check that it is. I think that it is, and I'll put the resources link in there too, Pamela.
And Pamela usually also posts in Vera Tarman's Facebook group every single Monday just to let people know. So you can usually check in on that as well. And then there's a question in the chat that says, how far ahead is that pre-contemplation stage to relapse? Like 1 week, question mark.
Sorry, I'm doing two things at once, but I'll do this later. You know, I'm happy to hear, maybe you ladies can chime in as well. That's a great question. And I think it varies. I think it really varies because, you know, it's almost like you have an emotional barometer that boils over. So it's like, how quick does it boil over, right? You know, like maybe you start the day with your kids, like, you know, saying, mommy, 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 and it's an annoying day, but then they go to school and you like go for a coffee and you're good. But maybe that's happens, and then after that you get in a car accident, or then like, and then you're like kind of, you know, you blew your top. So I think it varies.
Yeah, I would say the exact same thing, right? It's going to vary per client. It's also going to be what are the other emotional factors going on for you? How well versed are you in your coping skills and tools that you have? How connected are you to your community? Where then, you know, the pre-contemplation stage can be for a while where you're like, okay, like you just kind of know that you're not in your normal place. I'd say at that stage where you're starting to feel like maybe irritable. And I think that's where a lot of individuals can identify that, yeah, you know, this is maybe something's going on with me and I need to either not go to like the big event that night because I'm just more vulnerable, or I just need to find a way to keep myself safe and maybe check in with somebody from my community. Awesome. Well, if nobody has any other questions, does anyone have any questions about the conference or the next course that Molly has coming up on defense mechanisms? Do you want to talk a little bit about it quickly, Molly?
Sure, I can. So a lot of the feedback is that obviously we pack our workshops with too much information. So I've really tried to listen to that and scale it back. So this workshop is going to cover like the 20 most common, and that sounds like a lot, that's a big number. It says the 20 most common defense mechanisms that we use. My intention is that this workshop will be work heavy, and that like there will be education obviously in the pre-recorded videos, but that when we show up to our live sessions, that there will be the opportunity to process and actually do some work, so that you can increase, you know, emotional maturity, self-awareness, self-development, those kinds of things that we know we actually achieve when we use coping mechanisms in a way that work for us. So that's briefly what.
Can you give me like one example of one defense mechanism?
Yeah, so a common one that we hear a lot about in our world, I think, is denial. So there's, we'll talk about denial and what it really is and how it looks, the impacts of it in our life. And if it's something that we need to work on, all the ways that we can work on it, or some of the ways that we can work on it, and I think the caveat with all of this too, is that like, these are not inherently bad, right? They're defense mechanisms, which I think gets this, bad rap because, oh, you're so defensive, like what are you doing, when really they're actually psychological defenses is what they are. It's all about safety, right? So you guys know, like, that is what I preach. Every one of my workshops comes back to safety. So so surprise, surprise, we'll be talking a lot about safety, and how to go about creating that for yourself, and using those psychological defenses in more appropriate ways for yourself. So hopefully that answers your question, and certainly we'll talk more about it on the live. I also wanted to put it out there too, if anybody here is brand new to Sweet Sobriety, has never heard of us, has never seen our platform, I can also demo our platform a little bit for you guys if that's if anybody's interested in it. And if not, we have other recordings of open houses that you can go back and take a look at those too. So yeah,
I would appreciate that.
okay, sounds good. Then I will quickly do that. Okay, so when you first go to our website, this is the homepage. This is not logged in. So anybody who goes to sweetsobriety.ca, this is what you see. And you can click on any of these things. We've got blurbs on eating disorders, and then broke them down: bulimia, anorexia. We talk about food addiction. And across the top here, you can find, if you're at all interested in signing up for the in-live event, just go to all courses, and you can see all of our courses that are available. So they will either be home study, where it's work at your own pace, or they'll be live, like Clarissa is currently doing her procrastination course live, although she's the month is almost over, so it's almost done. But you can continue to scroll down. You can sign up for the full days there. You can sign up for just individual days as well. And then you can see any of the other things that are still available to you as a home study, things like emotional eating, You Are Not What You Weigh, cravings, as well as our monthly group coaching. So we offer 5 groups a week for $25 a month. So that's a phenomenal, we get lots of good feedback on that is a phenomenal value. And then our foundations course, a lot of what Pam talked about tonight in relapse prevention, that's part of our foundations course as well. That information is in there as and it's based on our treatment audit study that we are still collecting data on. But that being said, you can sign in, and if you've never signed in before, it'll just have you create all of the things that you need to do to sign in. I apologize. Hopefully it doesn't give me a caption now too. Okay. So when you sign in, it looks very similar. You'll get this little pop-up about like upcoming meetings. I always just cross that out. But you'll see the courses that you're signed up for. If you're signed up for any, that will be the first thing that pops up. As you can see, this is this course, the group coach recordings, is not something that's available to just anybody. You have to be a group member, and then you can sign up for group recordings. We record every session, every group coaching session, and 1 month's worth of sessions is available to you for replay. We make sure to label them, who the coach was, the date, who the coach was, and the topic. So if there's something in particular that kind of catches your eye, you can do that, or you can listen to and watch them all. If you keep scrolling down, you'll see the calendar. So you'll see like, what are the things that are coming up? So today is Wednesday. We don't have anything on our schedule for today, or at least I don't, because I'm not registered for Clarissa's course. If I was registered for Clarissa's course, that would have shown up on there. And then you can see tomorrow's groups. We got 2 groups on Thursdays. We've got a group on Saturday. You're probably seeing it in my time zone. Group Tuesday, all of that. Keep scrolling. You can, again, it's another opportunity to see all the courses that are offered. You can keep scrolling, and here's where you're going to come to community chats. You can also access that from the top. there's a link that says community. You can just click on that. So so for example, I'll just go to nuts and bolts. Everybody can see nuts and bolts. So again, if you're a person who's never signed up on our website, you're just a person visiting, everybody can see nuts and bolts. So people ask questions like, where can I see the agenda? And Clarissa gave them the link where you can see the agenda for the meetup, how to see the replays. I told them, hey, go to a different chat for that. Home study question, that kind of thing. I don't want to show you necessarily the chats from the other, just because people are members there, but this is free for everybody to see. But you get the idea. So I would be able to highlight a chat over here and it would just change to a different chat. Same with the coaching members. I think it's just, yeah, Clarissa's last post, we post links for our meetings there. So you can also access that from the top up here in the top right. It says community. We can do that. And it'll take you to the same thing. You can sign up for our email list. You can come look and see what we offer for one-on-one coaching. There's little blurbs about each of us, and we have book now buttons. You can find different places where we have been interviewed, all the different places we've been interviewed, either a solo or together. We have our frequently asked questions. So things like, what about membership? How do I cancel? What's, any of those kind of like questions that you might be worried about before you commit. Resources, I put the link in the chat, but here we've got Pamela's group, CJ, who's here or was here, I don't know if she still is, hosts a group on Tuesdays. Bethany and I share Fridays, Saturdays with Marla, Sundays with Susie. You can go right to the meeting from those links at the time. Things like 12-step meetings, some podcasts that we would love for you guys to listen to if you want a resource on food addiction, sugar addiction, any of that. YouTube, yes, we do have a Sweet Sobriety YouTube channel. Somebody was like, we did that, we have that, who knew? I've been pretty lackadaisical on it over the summer. I have some more interviews that I will get up there, some books and some social media. So again, if you guys are not members of Vera's website, Facebook group, it's the very first one there. We have a Facebook group that you can join. Breaking Up with Sugar is Molly Carmel. Sugar Addiction Kill the Sugar Demons is Jonathan Cranford. And then Michelle Shapiro also has some good resources on her social media. So SS Stories, it's just another place for you guys to find those. You can just click each one of these and it'll show you the video. You don't have to find the YouTube channel, but you certainly can, and you can subscribe to that. So I think that covers it all, Clarissa, right? I don't know.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
it was great. I think it was
Okay.
fantastic. So yeah, and if anyone does have any questions about how to navigate, if they sign up, please just send us an email. We'll be happy to help walk you through it. We always send out like the link for the group recordings when we get new members. But we know, like, trust me, it took me a long time to learn the platform, and I still message Molly all the time when I'm creating courses, and I'm like, I don't know what I did, but I deleted a community. I don't know how that happened. It just happens. And so don't ever feel like it's, out of, the realm of things that I haven't done myself, because, next thing you know, Zenler might be shut down and it might be all Clarissa's fault. So we just really want to thank you all for joining us today. And we look forward to seeing the individuals that are going to come to the meetup. But yeah, if you have any questions about the Sweet Sobriety community, just click on the link. There's our email addresses are there. And we're always happy to chat and have new members as well. And if you are considering, maybe this is the group for me, maybe it's not, we do offer a 7-day refund. So you can come in, you can check out a group. If it's not the right fit for you, then that's perfectly okay. We really just want to make it accessible for people to just try something new. Awesome. Well, I hope everyone has a great evening. Thank you so much for joining us. And we'll either see you in our Sweet Sobriety community or we'll see you. We have another open house happening on, hold on, we're going to announce it for you guys anyways, but it will be September 6th. Jennifer Lindo Crank, she's a nutritionist. She's going to be doing, the topic is going to be neo-nutrition. She's going to talk about, and she will be another speaker at our conference on the Sunday along with Pamela. So yeah, we're really excited about this and all the topics that we're getting to learn about as well.
Yeah. Be sure to join us on Instagram Live next week too.
Yeah,
We love
definitely.
to have people there. Absolutely. Take care, guys. Thank you
Hey.
so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
If you like what you heard today, please remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Thank you for watching.